It's You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions. And before I get to the questions, I just want to say a big thank you to all of you who came to the Reason Rally, and especially those of you who came up and said hello to me. That was terrific. This is kind of the first time we've had a chance to really talk since the Reason Rally. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who attended and made the event such a great success, which, despite what you may have heard from a few resentful, gloomy sort of naysayers in the atheist community, it was a fantastic event. It was a great success. I got to meet a lot of really cool people, and I even got a gift. Check this out. I met the head honcho of Atheism TV himself, and I hadn't seen him since the last Reason Rally 4 years ago, and he gave me a free gift, a Atheism TV baseball cap, and I did promise him that I would wear it in a video, so there we go. Check it out. It's me, right? I look like a 19th century baseball player. Like I'm a member of the Chicago White Stockings or something. Anyway, our first video, I fucked up already. What do you think of that? Our first question comes from Ahoyerno, who says, as people grow older, they seem to become more conservative, more grumpy, and less interested in advancing society. The Four Horsemen are great examples. They used to be extremely progressive, but as they grew older, their ideas stagnated to the point that Hitchens supported Bush and his neocon policies. Harris and Dawkins have similar issues. How do you protect yourself from falling victim to grumpy grandpa syndrome? In 30 years, Minority X is recognized by progressives. Will you be in favor of granting full rights to X? In a prop referendum for Group X, how will you make sure you're on the right side of history? The first thing I'm going to do to ensure that I'm on the right side of history is to remove this hat and put the other one back on. I feel better now. But seriously, thank you very much for the gift. And it fell on the floor, but that doesn't change the fact that I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Atheism TV, check them out. Well, here's the thing. I don't know if you can ever completely avoid falling victim to old person syndrome, grandpa syndrome, whatever you want to call it, out of touch syndrome. I mean, that's just sort of the way society works. Society evolves and society changes, and if you are fortunate enough to live long enough, you will eventually see society leave people your age behind. It will progress beyond your values, beyond your concerns, and it will begin to concern itself and center itself more on the younger generation, the generation of your children or your grandchildren, what have you. And it's inevitable, I think, that you will come to feel out of touch with that, or you will come to feel that they don't have their priorities in order or whatever. But how do you guard against it? How do you ensure that or how do you minimize that effect on your thinking? I think you have to be flexible. I think you have to be aware of the changes happening. I think you have to be aware that social progress is an inevitable thing and is a good thing, and you can't fight it because you can't fight it. It's going to happen. Things are going to change. Whether you think they're for the better or for the worse, things are going to change. Society is not stagnant. It moves, it changes, it evolves, it grows, and hopefully it will continue to become more liberal and more inclusive and more tolerant of people from diverse backgrounds or people with different challenges or different obstacles. And I think that you have to accept that and be aware of that and embrace it. And if you do that, and you make an effort at doing that, especially as you get older and society starts to pass you by and starts to become less interested in your particular concerns or their concerns typical of your generation, if you keep that in mind, I think you can minimize the, as you call it, the grandpa effect. We'll see. Check back in with me in like 30 or 40 years and see how I'm feeling. Jack Coyer, have you ever experienced any films, TV shows, books, plays, etc. that you found you just couldn't get into because of its representation of an issue, regardless of your stance on the issue itself? Yeah, I have. This has actually happened to me more often with works where the issue is one that I'm interested in and the position that the work takes on the issue is similar to my own position. Like, I'll give you an example that just pops into my head, and it's really interesting because as I sit here thinking about it, I wonder if I watched this movie today, if I would feel the same way about this aspect of it. But there was a movie that came out about 15 years ago or so, starring Denzel Washington and Will Patton. It was a football movie called Remember the Titans, that was like a racial tolerance story. It was about a majority black high school and a majority white high school that were forced to integrate, and the football team, the white football team and the black football team, had to come together and become this, multiracial football team, this integrated football team. And it was a story about, not only was it a sports movie about them coming together to have the great season and win the big championship game at the end, but also they had to overcome their differences, their racial intolerances, and see past the stereotypes. And on paper, that's all great. Like that's a really nice story for people to hear. Let's overcome racism, everybody. Let's overcome our prejudices. That's something I'm completely on board with. But the movie was so heavy-handed and so pushy about what, to me, is a fairly obvious message. But, now I sit here and as I think about it, it's been a long time since I saw the movie, but I think about it now with our presidential election looming in a few months, and one of the two major parties in my country having nominated an overt, just blatant, unapologetic racist as its presidential nominee. And I think, maybe if I watched that movie today, I would find its message and how pushy and didactic it is about the message of racial tolerance and the importance of diversity. Maybe I would find that more welcome, because maybe now my eyes have been opened. And I think, Jesus, we probably are still racist enough in this country that we could benefit from people watching this movie. So, that would be my answer, Remember the Titans. But as I sit here thinking about it, I don't know. Maybe I was too hard on it. Maybe that's exactly the sort of thing we need. Packard Sonic. I covered a story about the French girl that committed suicide on my channel, and it got demonetized twice. Yet when a much bigger channel like the Young Turks covers the story, and they showed the video of it actually happening, I bet they weren't demonetized for it. Is YouTube in the wrong here for doing that when I never showed that video of the girl committing suicide type of content, yet they did, and we just talked about it? If you think they're in the wrong here, how can I fight it? Well, the thing is, I don't know how you can fight it, and I don't know if you could ever find out if they are in the wrong, because the monetization and demonetization process, like much of the rest of how YouTube makes these sorts of decisions, is very opaque. It's very difficult to know for sure why a given action was taken against you. If they demonetized your video for doing something that the Young Turks did, and they didn't demonetize the Young Turks video, but they did demonetize yours, and the only difference between the two is that your channel is a much smaller channel and the Young Turks is a much larger channel, gets lots more views and makes YouTube a lot more money. Yeah, that seems kind of wrong, I don't know if, it seems morally wrong, it seems ethically wrong. I don't know if there's anything you could do about it, because I imagine if you asked anybody at YouTube about it, they would say that YouTube reserves the right to monetize or demonetize any videos it wants for any reason it wants. So I think that's probably the answer you would get. But, if that is indeed what happened, of course, I think you're in the right. I think as long as you're not violating anybody's rights, you should have the right to monetize any video you want, if YouTube has given you that option on your channel, which obviously it has. But that's just ethically speaking. I think in terms of YouTube's terms of service, they can probably do whatever they want to us. We're probably just kind of trapped, because YouTube could always say, well, hey, you don't have a right to a YouTube channel, which is true. You could always just go somewhere else, and maybe some other platform will let you monetize your video, which sucks. But I think that's the situation. But that might not even be the situation, because again, it's so difficult to discover exactly why YouTube does these sorts of things in the first place. Grey Ghost Volume 1. Steve, have you looked into the simulation hypothesis? Personally, I'm not convinced, chiefly because of Occam's razor and the fact that the premise is fundamentally unfalsifiable. But it seems likely, and it's slowly gaining traction among physicists. I just can't help but shake the feeling that we're simply replacing one form of a supernatural with another, though we had the same problem with string theory. I guess you could call me a simulation agnostic. Do you have a take on all this? Yeah, kind of. And the simulation hypothesis, for those of you who don't know, is the notion that the reality we experience every day is not actually reality, that it is a simulation of some kind that we are experiencing. I do kind of think, at least at this point, it's unfalsifiable. If physicists or some other theoretician in some other field comes up with a way to test it, to be able to determine whether or not we are in a simulation and make a prediction, it says, okay, if this happens, then it means we are in a simulation, and if this happens, it means we aren't, then we're talking about a whole different ballgame. But as it stands right now, and just based on my very limited understanding of the hypothesis and what it says, I don't see how you can tell. I don't see how we would be able to tell. And if that is the case, if we are in a simulation, but it is so perfect that we could never tell if we were in a simulation or not, then, I mean, ultimately, I think it's a semantic question. I don't think it really matters. I think it's a lot like the brain in the vat problem. You know, can I prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that my experiences are real, or that that I am not a brain in a vat just sort of hallucinating this whole thing? No, I can't prove that to 100% certainty without a shadow of a doubt. But if my life is just the result of stimulus that my brain in a vat is receiving and none of this stuff is really here, the illusion is so perfect that it doesn't really matter to me. And the same thing is true of the simulation hypothesis. If the reality we interact with every day is not really reality, but is in fact a simulation, it is so perfect, and it is so flawless, and it feels so much like reality that it really doesn't matter. Yondaim, I'm probably mispronouncing that, I apologize. Hey Steve, it's Pride Month. During this month, I think it would be a good idea to reflect on all of the LGBT who have personally touched our lives. Can you think of someone from each of those acronyms? Lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, who has inspired you, and if they have, in what way? Yeah, that's a really good exercise, actually. I think that's something that we all should try to do. Try to think of someone who is an identity represented by each of those letters, and try to think of someone who has made our lives better in some way. For L, for lesbian, 2 of my teachers when I was in school were lesbians. At least two that I know of. There were probably more, but there are 2 at least that I know of. My speech therapist in elementary school, and my algebra teacher in 8th grade. They were both fantastic. They were both terrific teachers. I had a good relationship with them both. And I was never much of a math student, but my math teacher in 8th grade definitely did her best and made me the best math student I could have been. And we did fantasy baseball for one of our projects, so that was pretty cool. And she was a Star Trek fan. For gay, my landlords are gay, and they're awesome. And I think they're terrific, and they have made a difference in my life by providing us with a place to live, and quite a reasonable rent as well. Bisexual, I'm going to go beyond my personal life a little bit and recognize Greta Christina, who I think is one of the great shining lights of the atheist community. A great writer, a great blogger, someone who I just admire and look to quite a bit as a role model and as just a really interesting voice in our community. And for trans, I am just spoiled for trans people, in both that I know personally and who I just know through their work, that I think are fantastic. My friend Stephanie Gatormson, Callie Wright, Zinnia Jones, Milo Stewart, who I gave a shout out to a few weeks ago. There are so many wonderful, amazing trans people in my life who I am just so grateful for. My friend Ryan, she's awesome too. So, I mean, when I think about it, it's like my heart sort of overflows. When I think about all of the LGBT people and from all of those letters that have enriched my life and have made my life better and have taught me to be a better person. It's really amazing. So thank you for asking that question and for giving me the opportunity to do that just now. David Edwards, is there really that much difference between atheists to cause this much hate? Yep. See, I think a lot of people are surprised by it because the the factionalism within the atheist community is relatively recent. It's just within the last few years. Back in the early days, at least in terms of the YouTube atheist community, the online atheist community, back in the earlier days, talking, I don't know what, 6, 7, 8 years ago, there was more of a unified front because there was us and there was them. There was the atheists and there were the religious people, particularly the Christians. And there was our side and there was their side. And then once the Christians that we were setting ourselves in opposition to mostly stopped making videos or got on and did other things, or some of us just got tired of having the same arguments over and over again, a few of us moved on to other targets. And when they chose their new targets, it turned out that they were sort of jerks. Because the targets that they moved to instead of creationism or evangelism or whatever were like feminism and trans people and black folks and people of color in general and Muslims. And they weren't just, despite their protests to the contrary, they weren't just criticizing Islam. They were being incredibly derogatory toward Muslim people in a very unreasonable, very bigoted way. So that's what happened. We had a common enemy in Christians and particularly creationists. And then when that common enemy went away, some of us turned to other enemies and turned out to be huge, bigoted assholes. Bigoted assholes with a taste for cyberbullying and harassment. For the most part, our atheism is compatible. It's the other stuff. It's the fact that it turns out a lot of us, especially the ones who were big YouTube stars from the early days, turned out to be just reprehensible bullies. And that's too bad for us and for the community on YouTube in general. But that's just sort of the way it worked out. Jim Nestor, hi Steve. Following the sad loss of Muhammad Ali, I was wondering, what are your thoughts on how important a role the great man played in the civil rights movement? Well, obviously I was not alive in the 60s when he played his most prominent role in the civil rights movement. But yeah, I mean, I think his role was significant. I think here you're talking about a guy, Muhammad Ali, who at one point in his life, at the height of his career, was probably the most famous person in the world. He was the closest thing to a second coming of Babe Ruth in terms of an athlete who was just recognizable to everybody. And in fact, I think worldwide he probably surpassed Babe Ruth in terms of just how recognizable he was. And he was a black man, and he was a symbol of black strength, of black pride. He was a black person living in a society where black folks were still being held down, were still being oppressed, and occasionally in the 60s in very visible, violent ways. And he was someone who stood up to that. And not only did he stand up as a black man, but he stood up as a black man who chose for himself a minority religion. And a minority religion that was very mistrusted back then and very demonized and looked down upon. He was a hero. He was a fantastic athlete. He was a larger-than-life character. There were very entertaining, very sort of clownish aspects about him. He could cut a promo better than most pro wrestlers could. I mean, he was just an incredibly entertaining figure, but he was also, I mean, he had ice water in his veins. He had steel in his spine. He was just he was just a heroic figure in our culture, not just because he was a great boxer and an entertaining public figure, an entertaining personality, but because he was a person of principle in a time when people like him who stood up for their principles took a great risk to do that, you know? Yeah, nothing but good things to say about Muhammad Ali. Nothing but good things to say about Muhammad Ali at all. What about that moment in the opening ceremonies of the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta when he was the guy, the final holder of the torch. He was the guy to actually take the torch and light the Olympic cauldron. And, you know, he's standing there shaking with Parkinson's disease, and his public appearances like that at that kind of a scale had become very rare, you know, and there's fucking Muhammad Ali at the Olympics, where in 1960, I think it was, he had competed, and now there he is again in 1996, holding up the torch and lighting the Olympic flame. He was a hero. He was a hero, and I'm very sad to see him go. Anyway, I think that's about it for this. So, as my friend Troubleshooter advised me to do last week. Cue the thunderclap, because it's time for
the lightning round. Rapid fire questions, glib and adequate answers.
Lucas Hackett, One Angry Brony. Yo, Steve, Daryl Hammond as Sean Connery versus Norm Macdonald as Burt Reynolds. Which one of these owned Alex Trebek better on Celebrity Jeopardy? You know, I think to me the obvious choice is Daryl Hammond's Sean Connery, but I think I'm actually going to give it to Norm Macdonald's Burt Reynolds for the simple reason that I don't think Burt Reynolds even cared. I think Sean Connery was trying to get Trebek's goat and was trying to show him up and embarrass him. And I don't think Burt Reynolds really cared. And that gave him the edge. That's what made him seem even more awesome. Because he just didn't give a fuck. Oscar Madsen, I still use the word racism as meaning discrimination and prejudice based on race. Would you say, using that definition, that it is racist to say that black people can't be racist? Using that definition, yes, I would say it would be racist according to that definition to say that black people can't be racist in that sense. Because if you say that racism means just discrimination on the basis of race, and then you're saying that black folks are not capable of that, you're saying that there is something inherently special about black folks that prevents them from being racist in that sense. So, yes, I think that would be racist. But that's not what people mean most of the time when they say black people can't be racist. So it's kind of a meaningless question. But yeah, I think in the terms as you define them, yes, I think it would be racist to say that black people can't be racist in that sense. Chris Abbey, so why do you think Senator Sanders stopped declaring atheist? Do you think it's the same reason Speaker Ryan in 2012 suddenly remembered he was a Catholic opposed to Ayn Rand? In other words, atheist in high office, too far a leap? Yeah, I think it's because he wanted to be president. So, now he can go back to calling himself an atheist, I guess. Spaz Fox, you're creating a human centipede from U.S. presidents, either living or dead. Who is the middle piece? The middle piece is Ronald Reagan, and the back piece right behind Reagan is George H.W. Bush, just like it was in real life. Kevin Logan, is the new all-female Ghostbusters movie going to destroy the entire world or merely just Western civilization? It is only going to destroy the childhood of men. That's it. It won't touch anything else. It'll be like a neutron bomb dropped just on the childhood of men. It will obliterate our childhoods. But everything else will be untouched. So I'm told. I don't know. I'm going to see the movie. It might be pretty good. Tendai Mano Mano. As of the time of posting this tomorrow will be my birthday. And since birthdays often involve a cake, what is your favorite cake, Steve? Also, do you still celebrate it with a party or just enjoy the day doing the things you love? For me, it is a tie between coconut and carrot cake. Favorite cake is red velvet cake. I love red velvet cake. But for my birthday, I prefer to do absolutely nothing special. I prefer to treat my birthday as any other day. I don't have a party. I don't do special things. I just like to have a normal day for my birthday. Radical Bacon, Steve, why do people suck? I mean, it's what we do. It's the thing that we have evolved to be the best at overall as a species, I think. We suck. A more serious answer would be we suck because we are too self-involved. We are too myopic and too interested in our own needs and our own desires, and we don't pay enough attention to what other people need from us. That's probably a big reason why we suck. Crowbro, is it okay to body shame men since men are not held to the same beauty standards as women? No, I don't think it's okay to body shame anybody. As best I can, and I don't always succeed at this because sometimes I'm a jerk, but I don't think we should body shame anybody for any reason. Even if they are a huge asshole, I don't think we should body shame people. If someone's a huge asshole, you can make fun of him for being a huge asshole. You don't have to make fun of him for, their body type. That's not necessary. Joshua Purvis, hi Steve, I recently watched The Bride of Frankenstein. I like Frankenstein and the Wolfman. Who are your favorite monster movies and why? Thanks, keep up the good work, you're entertaining. Well, thank you, Joshua. My favorite monster movies would probably be The Invisible Man and The Wolfman from the old Universal series. I love those. I love The Invisible Man because it's so funny. And I love The Wolfman because The Wolfman is tragic. And I love both films because they both have Claude Rains in them, and you can't do any better than that. Monster movie from the 30s and the 40s with Claude Rains, sign me up. Where do I sit? Patrick Dodds, Steve, do you have a favorite guilty pleasure episode of any of the Star Trek series? My personal favorite is TNG's Hide and Q. Those aren't muskets. My favorite guilty pleasure, I mean, Spock's Brain, which is probably the worst episode of the original series, but I just get such a kick out of. I just love Spock's Brain. I don't know, a couple of the Ferengi episodes of Deep Space Nine are awful, but are also entertaining. You know, those are some that come to mind. But you know, most Star Trek shows, at least the ones that I enjoy, so we're talking about the original and TNG and Deep Space Nine. I genuinely enjoy most of the episodes, even the ones that aren't that great. Like, I genuinely enjoy them. So it's hard to pick a guilty pleasure. But yeah, if I had to pick one, it would probably be Spock's Brain. So there you go. That's it. That's it for the questions. That was the last one. It's time for the shout out. And the shout out this week is actually a tie-in with the subject of this past week's 5 Things video. On Wednesday, I uploaded, or published, I should say, the video 5 Important Things About Basic Income. And the recommendation this week, the shout out, goes to the YouTube channel of the Basic Income Earth Network. If you are interested in the concept of universal basic income and you would like a resource to maybe point other people to help explain what universal basic income is, what the advantages of it would be, why people advocate for it, why people think it's a good thing that we should have, or if you're one of those people who has maybe heard people talking about it here and there, but you're not really sure what it is or what it would do or why it's something that we should want to try, it's really a terrific resource. You can go there, you can watch those videos, you can follow up the other further resources that they provide and learn something about this concept of basic income that I talked a little bit about earlier this week. I'm very pleased and proud to recommend the YouTube channel of the Basic Income Earth Network, so check it out. I am also pleased and proud, for much more selfish reasons, to recommend the Lemme Listen podcasts. These are podcasts that are created by my very good friend Jason Harding. There are so many wonderful podcasts under the Lemme Listen banner. There is, of course, Lemme Finish, which Jason co-hosts with Finite Atticus. There is American Monsters and How to Destroy Them, which is an improv comedy podcast that is just hilarious. There is just added in the last several weeks to the Lemme Listen family a movie review podcast called Cinema Shack that is now hosted on the Lemme Listen website. That is just awesome, that you should totally check out. And speaking of movie review podcasts, my personal favorite, because I'm on it, there is Late Seating, the movie review podcast that Jason co-hosts with me, where we take a classic movie, a movie that is famously great or famously terrible. We watch it, we give it a fresh review, we summarize it and make fun of it and decide for ourselves and for your listening pleasure whether or not we think that it deserves the reputation it has. And this week you can listen to our newest episode of Late Seating, our review of the classic 1930 anti-war film directed by Louis Milestone, based on the classic novel by Eric Maria Remarque, All Quiet on the Western Front. Check out that review, check out all of our past reviews, check out all of the past episodes of all of the Lemme Listen podcasts by going to LemmeListenPodcasts.com. If you've never done it before, you won't be sorry that you did it. If you do it, which you should. So there you go. That's it for me, everybody. I'm out of here. Before I go, I want to remind you, as always, to please leave a comment on this video asking me your question for next time. You can ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too silly. I will answer as many of your questions as I possibly can in the next video. So until then, take care, everybody. I mean, it is a nice hat. It's got a buckle in the back and everything. Anyway, thanks for watching this video, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. And also, please consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.